good morning. I usually have my streams in the afternoon, but I'm trying to fix my sleeping schedule. It's something that a lot of streamers are fighting with, especially European streamers, because all the Americans are up during the night. All the interesting news happen during the night. And so you stay awake, and then you realize that it's 5 a.m., and you go to bed at 5 a.m., and you wake up at 4 p.m. And after that, it becomes a cycle. And so every now and then, my wife starts nagging, complaining that I don't help around the house because I'm asleep during the day. And so I'm like, you know what? I think she's got a point. And I try to improve on that. I try to stay up late and then reset my sleeping schedule. So this is why I'm streaming at these ungodly hours. But I know that I have some viewers that are trying to catch my streams live. And here's your chance. Now you can see me live. You didn't catch the start. Do you want me to do it again? Fuck it. We'll do it live. Right. The green t-shirt. I love this. There's a YouTuber that constantly refers to him as such. I disagree with every take. It's like, well, I don't disagree with the takes that the man has. I do believe that the man is strongly on the side of Russia on the issue. And so he is reporting from Ukraine. And whenever Ukraine scores a victory, he doesn't mention it or he downplays it. Whenever Russia scores a minor victory, he exaggerates it or he overhypes it. And he also pretends to be dumb, like when Ukraine makes a tactical maneuver, that can maybe play out or not, like they're taking a risk. He is backseat gaming, and he's always like, how can they have done this? Do they not see the colossal failure that awaits them behind the corner? And when the thing is successful, he just moves on. It's kind of like Thunderfoot, when he goes after Elon Musk, and I remember like Thunderfoot was watching this rocket go up, and he wanted it so bad to explode. Like he like you can see it on his face. The air of disappointment when the rocket actually landed. And, he wasn't happy that it happened. He was, like, seething, like, God damn it, it just landed. Could have exploded and give me some content on my video, but instead, no. Also, I'm generally curious, like, how many of these streamers are paid shills versus how many streamers are, like, legit. The reason I'm saying this is that, have you guys actually talked about Ukraine with, like, an average person? Right, like not someone that's constantly plugged in on the television, but like take an Uber ride, or just talk to your waiter, or well, not your waiter, because in some countries they don't do that, but like talk to your hairstylist, right? Like a person that you paid to talk with and engage, and they're not going to be confrontational, and try to ask them what their takes on Ukraine are, and you're going to notice that a lot of people have very nuanced takes. Like, in some situations, they will say, oh, okay, yeah, I agree with what Ukraine is doing here. In other situations, they will be like, oh, I think Russia has a point. Like, normally people have nuanced views of things. It doesn't mean that they don't have strong stances or that they don't lean on one hand or another. But, like, if you talk with them for, like, 2 hours or so, like, they will admit, yeah, in this situation, I can see this point. Or, they can argue from the other side. But when you're looking at the content creator, when you're looking at most YouTube channels, man, they're so one-sided. It's like 100% one-sided. And they exaggerate it. They dial it to 11. And I generally think that some of them must be paid. Now, here's why I think. I believe that the censorship on the internet now is significantly different than the censorship we noticed in 2016. So, like in 2016, the censorship was first a little bit subtle. They went for demonetization, they went for shadow banning, kind of giving you the hint that your content is unwelcome, right? Like, change your content, we don't like this. But after a while, they started flat out banning channels. Like, entire communities were gone from YouTube, right? Like, people that were talking about the Q stuff, people that were part of the MGTOW movement, white nationalists, they just like specifically targeted entire communities and just outright banned every single person there. And so like this type of censorship, hello Sultan, is not really productive, because people go, it's like, okay, so you're suppressing these people. Well, it means that they must have something important to say. And it would get people to actually look for these individuals on the internet and find them. And so they created a new type of censorship. The way they're doing it is they're having like a couple of channels. And you can notice this if you look at who are the most popular creators, right? The ones that have like over 1 million or 2 million subscribers. Almost all of them are associated with a PR company. Almost every single one, right? And sometimes they disclose it, sometimes they don't. You gotta look for it. But like in the overwhelming majority of time, they are actually associated with a PR company. So they're probably getting their talking points, or if not that, they're probably told you're not allowed to talk about this, you're not allowed to talk about that because we'll drop you. And I don't know if this is what the PR companies do, but it seems that the moment you're associated with one, like the algorithm favors you. Like all of a sudden the videos get recommended, all of a sudden you get promoted. And we know that some governments also pay in for certain content creators, right? So like they may be like PR companies as in corporate affiliated, you know, Disney, other entertainment companies can support its own streamers to shield their own products, or it can be like a government. And so the internet like constantly pumps up the shills, like the people that are paid. And meanwhile, the independent guys, like they're not going to reach a lot of numbers. Like I think the biggest number an independent guy can reach is on the Metacur metric, right? Like on the Jim Metacur, the internet aristocrat metric. I think Jim, or internet aristocrat, is a very charismatic individual. He's one of the few that can just say, I'm going to stream on this esoteric platform and get like 6,000 viewers, right? Like people are willing to seek him out and find him wherever he is in order to give him viewership. And so like I think that's the peak. I think like Medicare can get like 10,000 live viewers per stream. I think that's how much people can get without being associated with a brand, right? And any more than that means that someone is paying that person. The censorship now is mostly in the comments. I figure 50 to 75% of my comments in certain channels are auto-deleted. Yeah, the thing with the comments, I can tell you this from behind the screen, right? Like a person that actually does content creation. I'm not censoring anything. Like everything that gets censored is by the default automated system. Good morning. It seems we both didn't sleep well. Greetings from Norway. Well, thank you for the 50 Norwegian kroners. Yeah, my in-laws are also here, so it complicates things a little bit. EMH, thank you for subscribing to the channel. I appreciate it. Aspergold is associated with a brand. I think it's called Silverstream Media or something like that. Like he too is affiliated. And you will notice that the moment he spoke, I think it was about Palestine, like he had some takes on Palestine or something like that. Immediately he had to apologize and take a little bit of a vacation, right? Again, like just being a shill doesn't mean that the person is going to lie or is going to necessarily poison the well. It just means like there are maybe certain topics that they can't talk about. Or there may be certain topics that they are asked to talk about. We don't know. And my phone battery died. Hold on a little bit. Let me see if I can actually. I bought a new. I bought a new socket because all of them are filled. Like I have like 6 or 7 things plugged in around my desk. And so when my phone battery died. I had no place to plug it in, but now I actually bought something and I can plug in my phone. So the troll will be back after a very small commercial break. But yeah, I really hate the new smartphones. Jesus fucking Christ! Did you notice like we kind of reach peak effectiveness in technology around 2008? Because I remember in 2018 we had like these modular phones that basically allowed you to like swap their battery if needed. They were easy to fix, and now you're looking at an iPhone, and if your battery dies, you just gotta buy a new phone. And it's like, but why though? Like I got my iPhone like 4 years ago because it's good for streaming with VTuber models. It's got facial recognition shit. And so I thought it's a good investment. But like if I buy a new model, if I buy the new iPhone, it's pretty much the same phone, right? Like it doesn't have any advantages. The only reason you want to get a new iPhone is like a jewelry, like an accessory. It's like, okay, you go dating and you impress the lady of having an iPhone. As long as it doesn't have a cracked screen, by the way. But no, seriously, like iPhones, a lot of people go like, why do you buy them? It's jewelry for men. That's literally what it is. Like, if you want to get a gold digger, get an iPhone. Seriously, I'm not kidding. Speaking about censorship, TFM is streaming. I thought the fires in California now took him. Well, I'm glad he, or she, isn't he trans? I think he's trans. I'm glad that she is fine. Eskil, did you hear the news about the Norwegian refuel company called Holdback Bunkers refusing to refuel U.S. military ships in Norway? The reason was because of the meeting in the White House between Zelensky and Trump and J.D. Vance. Oh my goodness. America just got rid of cancel culture because they realized it's detrimental and destroying their society. And so now Europe is basically picking up America's trash. It's like, well, this didn't work for them, so let's try it out a little bit here. I just don't understand the mentality. Like even if like this, how the fuck is it moral, by the way? Like, why do ships and their captains have to suffer because of, a statement that a politician did? And it's so fucking petty, isn't it? It's so fucking petty if this is the case. It's like, oh, we're not going to refuel your ship. Do you know what happens, by the way? Romania had a similar thing. It wasn't ideologically motivated. I think it was environmental. Like, we decided to stop refueling certain ships that had like a more than acceptable polluting range or something. So now they just went to Turkey and they're doing business in Turkey, right? Like we just cut off our business because we decided to be moral fogging about the issue. And it's like, okay, well, I'm pretty sure that's what's going to happen to Norway, right? Like they're just going to refuel in another port. Oh, big fucking whoop. And if everyone does it, then they're going to create a national emergency because the prices are going to go up, right? Like if the ship is there, not to do you not to do charity, they're there to do business, and they're probably delivering cargo. So like if every company refuses to refuel them, well, they're just going to be like, okay, well, we're going to sell our stock in another country. It's weird that I'm streaming? No, it's not weird. It's a different from cancel culture because it's a submarine owned by the U.S. Army. Oh, okay, so you're talking about military ships. Right. Well, doesn't Norway want the U.S. help against Russia? Because, like, they're kind of close, aren't they? Aren't they interested in military backing? Not to mention, like, fucking with this particular administration doesn't seem to be the correct take. But it is what it is. Like, what can you say? It went from Pixel 6 to Pixel 9 Pro. All right. Green ships. Yeah, no, like they don't consider green ships, but they consider like this is the amount of pollution that a ship should be able to produce, and anything more than this is unacceptable. So no, we weren't talking about submarines in the case of Romania. In the case of Romania, we were talking about like normal cargo ships, and they decided, yeah, like if your cargo ship has more than this level of pollution, it can't dock into the port. But by the way, I misinterpreted the super chat. I thought like they're talking about cargo ships, but it's U.S. military submarines. Okay, no, fine. Well, I guess like they're just going to have to dock and refuel somewhere else. Oh, goodness gracious. In America, when you buy real estate, you make a deal and the attorney draw it up and you go closing and sign all the paperwork. Zelensky backed out at the closing. Yeah, so let's talk about Zelensky, right? Because this is why people are here. I waited for more individuals to gather. I also did a little bit of investigation to see like how this was received, and it's like even amongst Americans, it's like a 50-50 thing. Like 50% of people agree with Trump, 50% of people disagree, which is really interesting. I think it's because a lot of people believe that this was orchestrated, this was planned. Basically, like Donald Trump wanted to humiliate Zelensky, right? When in reality, I think like most people only watched those 10 seconds clip. They didn't watch the whole video. And I also think a lot of people don't understand what this was supposed to be. This wasn't supposed to be a debate. This wasn't supposed to be a negotiation. This was supposed to be a formality. The negotiation happened before this. Like most negotiations, they happen behind closed doors. So basically what took place is that Ukraine sent its ambassadors and diplomats to meet with the ambassadors and diplomats from the United States. And there they negotiated, right? So a lot of people say, well, of course, like Zelensky wants an agreement. Like he wants to know insurances. Like he wants an insurance that never in the history of mankind will Russia invade. Like they want the Americans to be able to foresee the future. Like they just... And it's like, he could have asked for that during the actual negotiation phase, right? When his team of Ukrainians discussed with the Americans the terms and conditions of the contract. That's what he was supposed to ask for these things. This wasn't the place. The reason there were cameras wasn't to embarrass him or to catch him off guard or anything like that. The reason there were cameras was to record the historical moment of the formality of him signing the contract. Like, if you look at other world leaders, this is how things are done. Like, every single time, even with Trump himself, right? Like, you know when Trump signs an executive order and shows it to the camera, right? He doesn't actually discuss, like, how to write the order. There aren't, like, some people coming in, like, can you change this line? Can you change that line? No. The executive order is done by his legal team of experts. They're writing it beforehand, right? Like it goes through the process of agreement, and when the press is there, he just signs it. This is what was this supposed to be. It was just like supposed to be. They're going there. Zelensky puts on a smile, shakes hands, right? Why? Because he already agreed with the deal beforehand. Like his team was satisfied. And like the team of Ukrainian legal experts were like, yeah, this is a contract that we're fine with. And the Americans went like, great, when do we sign it? And they were like, White House, 28 February. Okay, so like the whole thing was for Zelensky to show up and sign the stuff that he already agreed. Well, his team agreed, which I assume had his back. Unless he thinks that the team went rogue. So like this wasn't supposed to be a debate. This wasn't supposed to be a negotiation. This was just him supposed to like show up, smile, wear a fucking suit. We're going to go into that in a little bit. Sign the fucking thing and then have lunch. I can't believe he managed to snatch defeat from the jaws of history and become the first person in human history to get kicked out of the White House. He literally got kicked out of the White House. He got escorted out by Rubio. Now, there is like another explanation to this. And the reason like there are many explanations to this is because this is so fucking insane. This is so out of the ordinary that people can't just admit that, no, like he just made a gaffe. And they're actually thinking that this was pre-planned. And it is a possibility that it was pre-planned. Like maybe he just didn't want to sign the contract. Maybe he just wanted to dick around Trump. Like it's a possibility, right? Now the people who are suggesting this, the reason they're doing it is because the United States has donated a lot of money to Ukraine. A lot of money to Ukraine. But when you look at the actual audit, like the ones that we have access to in the newspapers, and no one is denying this, around only 10% of the money actually reached Ukraine. Because a lot of NGOs and a lot of people involved with the cash were grifting. So, like, the money never left the United States. That's my point, right? So, like, the U.S., like, promised a lot of aid, but a lot of that got grifted by the Democrats, got grifted by the NGOs. And so, like, the news reports, at least the ones that, you know, the people that are spreading the theory that he didn't want to sign the contract, which is built around the fact, well, the United States never actually wanted So the United States didn't really contribute that much when you look at the money. Like on paper, yes, on paper they contributed a lot, but the actual money that reached Ukraine is lower than the ones that the Europeans are giving. And so Ukraine was fighting all this time without America's help. They were fighting with the Europe's help. Now, America did help, right? Like 10% is still a lot. But at the end of the day, like they can still fight without it. I personally, like, even if this is true, I don't know. Like, this is what some newspapers are reporting. I don't even know if it's the case or not, right? Like, I'm just explaining a theory that people are having. Even if this is true, the only way Ukraine can win, like, it's path to victory. And it seems that victory means, like, getting 100% of the nation back. Like, if that doesn't happen, then every single European on the continent should enlist and fight against Russia until they grind up to every single person, right? The only victory possible, and there is a victory possible, like the realms of possibility, you know, if you're that guy from Marvel, Doctor Strange, and he goes into a trance and goes through all the possibilities, all the possible scenarios. There is a possibility for Ukraine to actually win, and that would be the collapse of the Russian economy, right? So in a war of attrition, you need manpower, and you also need money in order to gear up the men. And so if the Russian economy collapses, well, then they would sue for peace. They would basically say, okay, well, this war is unsustainable. The perfect example is the United States War for Independence, right? Like the Americans declare independence and they're fighting against the British Empire. Technically speaking, like small colonies wouldn't be able to defeat the British because they were the most powerful force on earth at the time. But the way you won was to cripple their economy. Like they couldn't afford to keep up. They couldn't afford to keep sending troops. They couldn't afford to keep sending the logistical strain in order to provide support for those troops. And so they had to sue for peace, right? So this would be possible. But the only way that it can work is if Russia keeps getting sanctioned. The economy is actually getting affected by it. It's very slow. Like usually economies have inertia. So even if you were to like today, it's kind of like, imagine this, right? If you have communism in a nation, like overnight you have a controlled economy. Well, usually you get like 40 years of prosperity even after that. Because like the economy has inertia, things keep moving, things keep going. But after those 40 years, you reach communism, like you get the stagnation, right? And so like this is what people are hoping. Again, we don't have the papers, we don't have the statistics. Like people that are pro-Russian will say that no, this is not the case. Like Russia economy is booming. The lifestyle of the average Russian is 100 times better than the lifestyle of an average European, right? And they show you videos of Moscow and St. Petersburg so you can see how rich Russia is. Meanwhile, if you talk to a Russian streamer, he's like, not doing so great. But again, the fact that Putin wants to come to the negotiation table, to me, it shows that they are suffering. Right? Because if they weren't suffering and they were like asking for negotiation, Putin would just say, well, we are going to take Kiev. You need to fuck off. We know what we're doing. We're not interested in peace talks, right? Like imagine trying to convince the Americans to come to the negotiation table when they're conquering Iraq. Like they would just fuck off. So he's not talking from a position of strength. Which means that, yeah, like maybe the economic things is affecting him. However, as I mentioned before, right? Like if we're going to assume that the theory that some people are having that Europe is helping Ukraine more than the United States. The United States is helping tremendously by imposing sanctions on Russia. From what I gather, Trump wants to lift those sanctions. In fact, there was an article a couple of days ago talking about Visa and MasterCard planning to rejoin operations in Russia. Well, even if the United States wasn't providing any military aid whatsoever, if you get them to lift the sanctions, I don't see how they can win. I genuinely don't. Now, you make the argument. So if the argument was that Zelensky was there to antagonize Trump, right? Like he wasn't there to sign the contract, and he was just there to antagonize. Then this must be like the most awful chess move in the entire history of mankind, right? Like if he was there in order to show the Europeans, look, the Americans are untrustworthy. Look how they're treating me. Like they don't understand that I'm suffering because I'm in a country that's invaded and it's war. And the United States and Russia promise guarantee to our territorial integrity. But when it comes to back on their guarantees, they're pussying out, they're extorting us, right? Because that's the narrative that they're trying to push. Which, by the way, isn't that far from the truth, because Ukraine used to be a nuclear power after the fall of the Soviet Union, and the Americans and the Russians like guaranteed through a treaty that in the case of anyone invading you, because at the time it wasn't just Russia and the United States, like at the time the Soviet Union fell, Romania had territorial claims on Ukraine, other neighboring nations have territorial claims, right? So like the idea was like if anyone invades us, the United States and the Russian government is going to guarantee our peace, right? Well, it happens that the Russians violated the treaty and invaded them. And now it seems that the United States is extorting them. But it is what it is, you know, like this is reality. You can complain, you can moralize, but like this is the reality. And so Zelensky, like the theory that people are having on the internet is that he wants to show the Europeans, look how untrustworthy the Americans are, stop signing contracts with them, stop relying on them because they're liars, right? Like the moment the push comes to shove, oh, they will help you a little bit and then extort you for every single penny. And so like if this was what he was trying to accomplish, I think it's a bad move. I don't think it's the right play, even if he was right, even if like you can, you know, say that, all right, well, I'm willing to give you the benefit of the doubt and let's say that this is the case. Still the wrong move to make. Politicians are great at making empty promises. I think one of the F-16 fighter jets out of 16 have arrived so far. Where? In what country, justifiably stupid? Aren't the Ukrainians just as bad, though? I mean, Russians are shooting them and Ukrainians are shooting. Why has Ukraine abandoned its principles? I'm enlightened centrist about all this drama. Yeah, I see what you're going with. It's the internet thing. It's like, oh, you can't be just as bad as them. I need to tell that to Dev. Dev, the Ukrainians can't shoot back because then they become just as bad as the Russians. Yeah, they can't use the same tactics. The refueling company boycott is not part of the Norwegian government policy. The government said it will continue to support U.S. Navy ships deployed in Norway. Well, there you fucking go. Then just have the United States ask the Norwegian government. I don't know how you do it. Figure it out. Give us fuel. We'll pay for it if you want our military there. If the company still refuses to refuel, there is a law in place which allows the Norwegian military to seize the refuel equipment and still provide fuel to the U.S. Navy ships. See, this is something that I disagree. I don't think it's... well, again, I'm not in Norway, so I shouldn't say, but like in a perfect country, that shit shouldn't exist. That's fascist, Chinese, communist shit. No, the government can afford to buy its own refueling station and provide the service that the company refuses to do. There you fucking go. Zelensky has legitimate grievance but expects 100% of victory and no compromise. Well, the thing is, like, I genuinely don't know, right, what the situation on the ground is. I don't know how many Russians he killed. I don't know how many soldiers he lost. I don't know what his economy looks like. I don't know how Russian economy looks like. And without these answers, I genuinely cannot possibly know if he is in the right or not. Because if let's say that he actually does have a point, and he does believe, because that, you know, you gotta take into account that it's not like these countries will fight to the last man. Like it's not that they're going to send to the meat grinder every single person. Even the Russians, as big as they are and as massive of a nation as they are, they have this thing called war weariness. Every nation has it, right? It's kind of like why the United States lost in Vietnam. Like the United States has the capability of absolutely crushing Vietnam. Like if the United States wanted to, it could have levied Vietnam to the ground. But it didn't, right? Because the war objective was different. And so you're not, like, the United States didn't fight up until the last man or until their economy collapsed. No, it fought until, like, the support for the war was so untenable, it was so disastrous, that they decided, all right, we're pulling out. And so, if Zelensky believes the same about Russia, maybe... Historically, though, Russia doesn't really pull out. but they did actually pull out from Afghanistan. They did have like other wars that they lost. But still, without like knowing the actual battlefield, without actually knowing what's on the ground, it's difficult for me to assess if he should still fight or not. At the end of the day, like the concern that Europeans have is that appeasement doesn't work, in the sense that they already tried it, right? So again, you have Russia and the United States after the fall of the Soviet Union agreeing with the territorial integrity of Ukraine, right? Like they signed the contract. And then Russia comes in and takes Crimea. And they break the long peace that took part in Europe for all my life, right? And so there were sanctions, but like no one actually applied them. Like everyone's still treated with Russia. And by the way, like Russia selling gas, it's not just business as usual. It's not like me selling you something and just expecting money. No, like Russia would use gas as soft power. Like they could tell Germany, you need to pass this legislation. And if they don't pass the legislation, gas prices go up, or the quantity of gas lowers. And they're like, oh, well, we need to make a couple of repairs. We need to make maintenance on this pipeline. So the gas quantity is going to lower. And then it hurts Germany, right? Like they used to do these things. And so the reason they invaded Crimea was because they thought, well, what is Europe going to do? Like, they're dependent on our gas. And then they take Crimea. And after that, they start invading Ukraine. And this is when the European nations are like, well, okay, we tried appeasing. It didn't fucking work. Now the interesting thing about it is that Russia also has an ideology that actually wants to conquer Europe. It's called duginism. So Dugin, in my opinion, is a very intelligent philosopher that understands geopolitics extremely well. I wish that Europe would have the equivalent of Dugin here. Although that may actually be a bad idea, because having two Dugins on the continent would probably lead to a war. But Dugin is a favored of Putin. Like, his ideology is something that Putin likes. And Dugin does advocate for the capturing of Eastern Europe, for the subversion of Germany. And from America's point of view, this would be catastrophic. Like, if I was to advocate for the MAGA movement, why they should care about Ukraine, it's something very difficult to do, right? It's like justifying to an American why they should care about a country, a continent away. But I think like the framing is wrong. It's not like, why should America care about Ukraine? It's like, why should America care for its enemies? Like, sorry, what does Ukraine mean to the America's enemies? Now, Russia is you can say, well, okay, Russia is not an enemy, depending on, the talking point. But like, why should why should America's competitors, right? Like the people that are trying to become the world hegemon, what do they gain from having Ukraine? And the answer is, Ukraine is a nation that's bigger than Germany, with an immense potential. And Russia having Ukraine would create it into a superpower that would rival China. Assuming that they invest properly, assuming that, it takes 20, 30 years to get it up and running, like any nation that pumps money into Ukraine is going to become a superpower. And, America likes going around and setting tariffs and telling other smaller nations what to do. Well, it could actually lead to an all-out war if you have a competitor that's like Russia, and now they want to be the ones doing that. Like, they want to be the ones setting tariffs. They want to be the ones controlling the shipping lines. They want to be the ones. I mean, take into account that if China wants to invade Taiwan and America wants to defend it, and then Russia joins in and they have Ukraine, it's going to be very difficult and very bloody, right? So this is what's happening pretty much. It's like the West is trying to prevent Russia from having Ukraine. Now, Russia tries to justify why it should have Ukraine. And they're coming with, like, historical arguments, like we saw Putin discuss with Tucker Carlson. They're coming with, like, oh, yeah, but they're oppressing our minorities over there, which is, like, the cost belly of every single European country since the dawn of time. Even Germany did it with Poland. Hungary did it with Romania. Romania did it with other people. It's like... they're oppressing our minority. Chances are they may very well be. I don't fucking know. But it's the case for invasion almost every time. I mean, by this logic, Ukraine should invade Russia because they too have Ukrainians, people that are oppressed in Russia, you know? So, yeah, like, going back to this, was it, if the idea was that Zelensky never wanted to sign to begin with, I think it was a huge, colossal blunder. I don't think you want to antagonize the United States, even if you personally don't consider them allies, but despite that, I believe that America was an ally in this. But even if you were to say, oh, they're trying to fuck me over, they're trying to extort me, or whatever, antagonizing them is not good because you get them from a neutral position into an antagonistic position. And having America neutral is a lot better than having them being antagonistic. I think Zelensky should just say, sorry, I thought it was the opposite. Of course, I'll sign the deal. No, there's like no... See, this is the thing that I'm saying. If I was there, or if any person that I trusted was there, the deal would get signed. Literally, all he had to do was to sign. I've been enjoying seeing your perspective on the US and Europe. Thank you, Thunder Chicken. I appreciate that. And so, yeah, like, here's what I think happened. And I think, like, this is the most probable cause that I can think of. So, I think that his team and the American team reached an agreement, right? And from what I understand, based on what Mark Rubio was saying, Zelensky actually wanted to go to Washington. Like, the deal could have been signed in Ukraine. It could have been just a formality. You know, here's the paperwork. Just sign it, Mr. President, and that's that. But he wanted to go to Washington, right? And so, the reason he wanted to go, I think, is because he wanted to speak with Trump before the press conference. Like, he wanted some alone time with Trump before the event in order to talk things out. He didn't get that. I think, like, Trump just doesn't like the man. And the reason Trump doesn't like him, Mark Rubio stated as such, and the White House gave a conference, is the way he does business. They already tried signing the mineral deals before. And Zelensky said yes, but then in the last moment he decided not to, and he did a press tour saying that Trump is inundated with Russian propaganda and he is fed false information, blah, blah, blah. Now, this is insulting, not just to Trump, but it's insulting to America. It's like America is the world hegemon. They have their intelligence agencies. As corrupt as they are, I think they can at least give the president the situation on the ground. I don't think like the CIA is pro-Russia in order to give Donald Trump pro-Russian propaganda. The Pentagon itself is working with the Ukrainians in order to help them achieve victory, like providing them intelligence, giving them, like satellite coverage, Starlink, all of that. The very essence that like the Pentagon doesn't know what's on the ground or is trying to misinform the president is incredibly insulting. It's like fucking baffling, no, right? So like when he goes on and tells the public in front of the cameras that like Trump is being surrounded by Russian propaganda and he's being disinformed, if I was Trump, I would be fuming as well, right? So I think like at the personal level, not like political or cynical, like at the personal level, Trump doesn't like him. And to be fair, like from what I heard, Joe Biden didn't like him either. Like people do business with him because he is the president of Ukraine. But like Trump, for instance, likes Macron, right? Like Trump may disagree with French's policies, but like he likes Macron. You can definitely see that there is an energy between them. Like they generally connect. They like each other. Trump doesn't like Zelensky, and other world leaders also don't like Zelensky. But you don't have to like the man, right? Like you don't have to like someone to do business with. However, if you don't like the man, well, small things like this, for instance, seeing him before a press conference, come into play. I'm just going to sign the contract and be done, right? I'm going to put a smile on the camera, going to put a friendly face for the camera, but I don't want to spend more time than I have to, right? It's just business. Whether if it was Macron, Oh, I'm pretty sure that if it was Macron, like, Trump would have seen him before the cameras. It's like, oh, Macron, what's up, my N-word? You know, you know, like, that's probably how it would have gone. With Zelensky, it's like, ew, just let's sign the deal and get out of it, right? And so Zelensky wanted, in my opinion, some time with Trump before signing the deal. He didn't get that. And so he was very frustrated throughout the entire meeting. His body language was very antagonistic. This is what the White House said, that his body language was a problem. Constantly rolling his eyes, sighing, sitting with his hands crossed. And the fact that he didn't wear a suit is also something that we'll talk about later. And this is what led to the conversation with J.D. Vance. And Zelensky didn't handle it appropriately, and so the deal didn't happen. I think this is a lot more believable than the fact that he didn't want to sign the mineral rights. Now signing the mineral rights, by the way, is also something, like, a lot of people say, oh, just sign it, just sign it. He's probably going to indebt 10 generations of Ukrainian children. Ukraine is not a very rich or wealthy nation. And the natural resources is one of the few things it has. Now, it doesn't have the technology to exploit them now, but it may have it in the future. And so, try to think about this as you, as Americans, right? Like, having to give a big chunk of your natural wealth to another nation, even if, like, they were to help or whatever. It's not really tenable, right? And probably, like, if you can somehow do it without signing that, maybe he is considering. I don't fucking know. Or even if it's on the table, even if the bargaining chip is on the table, he will try to get as much as possible for those minerals. But unfortunately, he met someone else that also wants to get as much as possible, which is Donald Trump. And so, like, one of the tactics that Donald Trump can do is to put you in the corner and make you think about it. Now, I think this is what happened. Because I understand that he did want to sign, but the Trump administration escorted him out. And it wasn't because of the disrespect or anything like that. It was basically because they think that he doesn't want peace. Right? Like, he's not willing to make concessions for peace. And if he's not willing to make concessions for peace, then this negotiation can't go forward. A good deal is good for everyone. Well, actually, it's the opposite. A good deal is a deal where all parties have something to complain. Makes me wonder how world leader talks on the phone behind closed doors. It's probably extreme blood sports. Well, we actually saw the conversation between Macron and Putin. It was quite friendly, and Putin was like, oh, I'm just at the gym. And Macron was like, I'm going to arrange a meeting with you and Biden. Do you want to go to Washington? And Putin was laughing, saying, oh, I was just going at the gym and wanting to hit the pool. But, like, if you're making different plans for me, like, what can I do? And then he was also very cordial by saying in France, like he spoke French, Putin, telling Macron, have a nice day, Mr. President. You know, like, they seem to be behaving in a very cordial manner. Like, they're even behind closed doors, from what I see. At least the world leaders from important nations, right? They seem to be very friendly with each other, even if they're having disagreements. He didn't call Vance bitch, right? He said suka bliet. Now, a lot of people think that means he called Vance a bitch, but what it actually translates is like, oh, fuck my life, right? It's basically Zelensky invited Vance to visit Ukraine. And Vance said, no, because I saw the videos where you're taking people to a propaganda tour, and I'm not interested in that. And Zelensky went like, oh, fuck my life. You know, it's still unprofessional, not what a diplomat should say. But we gotta get the story straight. He didn't call J.D. Vance a bitch. He probably called him a bitch after. Like, I'm pretty sure he had a lot of Russian curse words for J.D. Vance after the meeting. But to be fair, during the meeting, he did not call him a bitch. Wait until peace is signed this year, and leftists try to take credit for it after years of supporting this war. I generally don't know if it's going to be signed. It will be interesting, though. Zelensky doesn't want to negotiate. Okay, fight it out, and we'll negotiate with his successor once he's in the Siberian Gulag. Well, the CIA is renowned for regime change, and if the CIA and the KGB agree that regime change should happen, but the question is, like, what do Ukrainian people think? I don't know a poll, I don't know a survey if they like him or not after this. T will put it all behind him if Zelensky is at least more open to negotiation. Yeah, that's what I think. But the question is, like, is he open to negotiation? And again, like, take into account that he is getting extorted. Like, this is de facto happening. He is getting extorted. Again, the reason Ukraine gave away its nukes, which would have prevented Russia from invading, is specifically due to the fact that the United States and the Russians guaranteed its territorial sovereignty. And if you sign something, right, it's common sense that you're going to follow it. Unfortunately, in international politics, you sign something, and then 50 years down the line, you have to back up what you signed, and people forget, the population doesn't remember. And so it's like, well, why are we defending this? And so, like, they're interested in extorting. Well, it is what it is. De facto, however, there should have been American boots on the ground according to the treaty, right? Like, according to the agreement. But the thing is, like, in international court, it's like, oh, yeah, but, like, they violated this clause and we violated that clause. And, you know, like, countries try to wiggle out. But again, like, the moral argument of why America should defend is because it made a commitment. And if it doesn't, and this is what Zelensky is basically trying to tell Europe. It's like, stop dealing with the Americans because, look, they're making commitments. And when it comes to backing them up, they're pussying it out. It is what it is. Now, one of the things that happened is that one journalist asked him about the shirt, right? Like, why is he wearing a shirt? Let me see if I can finally find this whole thing. To be fair, if he wore a business suit, it would have been an extremely powerful statement. Because Zelensky has always worn the shirt to the point where there's even a joke on the internet where people are wondering, is it the same shirt? Does he wash it? Right? And so, like, if you always wear the shirt, but, like, for one meeting you're wearing a suit where you're doing business with the Americans, it would have projected a lot of power. Like, first of all, you're taking the business very seriously, and secondly, it says, like, you're finally changing the shirt because you realize that the war is almost over. Like, that would have definitely been a very impactful gesture that I'm pretty sure the analysts and everyone would have noticed and picked up on it. It's like he's wearing a suit because he's basically thinking the war is over. But let's see how he handled it, right? So, as you can see, like, everyone in the room, every single person is wearing a suit. Now, a lot of leftists and people are like, oh, so why does it matter? Well, you know, you try going to an event, a job interview, on someone's anniversary, a wedding, a funeral. Go wearing shirts and sneakers. You know, see how people react. Like, there are some customs, right? Like, there are some things that are appropriate. Like, when you see someone, you're supposed to say hello. When someone leans his hand towards you, you're supposed to shake it. Now, you can be a cheeky little shit about it and start to question tradition, but, like, why are we doing this? Why is this necessary? Or you can just stop being a stuck-up and just understand, read the room and just stop being antagonistic to every single thing. But one of the journalists did ask him, so let's see how he responded. I'm sorry if the volume is too low, but people in my house are sleeping. I'll try to tell you what is being asked. Why don't you wear a suit?
Why don't you wear a suit? You're the highest level in this country's office, and you refuse to wear a suit.
You're at the highest level of this country's office, and you refuse to wear a suit.
Just want to see if you do own a suit? Yeah, probably.
So Donald Trump, look at his expression. It's like, why the fuck don't you wear a suit? You know, that now everyone in the room is like, you know, that's actually a good point. Like, why don't? Because you like, are you trying to show disrespect? This is what the question is, right? Like, you're coming here so you can get extorted and get help. But, like, why don't you wear a suit? Why don't you wear a suit? I'm wearing a suit. He's wearing a suit. This guy's wearing a suit. Why aren't you wearing a suit?
A lot of Americans have problems with
He says that he has problems. This is like a really bad response. And I'll tell you why he isn't wearing a suit. It's not out of disrespect, by the way. But this is an Eastern European thing. You know, in America, you have like Kamala Harris doing the fake accent in order to appeal to people. In Eastern Europe, we appeal to class. So like politicians try to pretend they're poor. It's like, look, I'm relatable. I'm just like you. He's got billions in the fucking bank. Okay, he can afford this. Like, he has suits. We have seen him wear suits. He does have a wardrobe with suits. Not to mention, he's the president of a nation. They have suits. It's not like there's no. He could have asked. He literally could have asked if he wanted to. I'm pretty sure, like, the White House actually provides cleaning services for suits. No one takes advantage of them except for one person. Can you guess which is the person that always comes to America with dirty laundry so that the White House washes them? I'm actually curious if people know. This is an interesting trivia. I'm not kidding. Like, if you're invited to the White House as a foreign dignitary, they have, like most hotels do, they have cleaning services. And the reason for it is that if you're traveling, right? Like, you're a person with a diplomat. And you're traveling for like 12 hours. You finally reached America. You're sweaty, right? Your shirt is sweaty. And you, like, where are you going to wash it, right? So, like, the White House is going to allow you to wash it. But, like, all leaders, every single world leader, they're coming with their own personal jet. And they usually have, like, two suits, right? Like, one to wear in the jet and once when they get there. So, like, they don't actually ask the White House to do the cleaning services. But, yes, there is one person on the planet, just one. No one else does it. Benjamin Netanyahu. He is the only person that actually does bring dirty laundry for the Americans to wash it. I don't think he does this because he doesn't have money. I think it's a political statement. I genuinely think it's a political statement to get the Americans to, like, you're going to wash my suit. Pedro, nice joke, says Eskil. What's the difference between Zelensky and a refrigerator? A refrigerator doesn't fart when you take the meat out. Oh my goodness. This is actually a joke said by someone. This cache was for Arch, but he had Doxer PDF apologist Del Vecchio, short fat otaku, on his stream, and you didn't. Carrot. Well, maybe I should get him then. Like, if people don't like him. Maybe I should get him. I had a lot of spats with Dev on Twitter. No, I don't know. Like I think we separated ideologically too much for us to get along with each other. So it is what it is. I don't try to be underhanded with him, but like every now and then a little jab. I think he's just lazy. No, like you gotta understand, politicians don't wash their laundry. Like they have staff to do it. Right? And so the only reason that he does it is, I think, like, in order to send a message. So, yeah, Zelensky says that he's in trouble. This is why he doesn't have a suit. Take into account that English is his second language. So, basically, he's saying that, his nation is in war and his nation doesn't have cash. And so, like, he's living a humble life. He will wear a suit after the war will finish.
Yes, maybe something like yours. Yes, maybe something better. I don't know. We will see. Maybe something cheaper.
Maybe something better and cheaper than what this guy is wearing.
Yeah. Thank you.
Okay. Not the way I would have handled it. Take into account that Zelensky is a comedian. Right? Like, he should be able to handle this. He should be in his element. Okay, fair enough. English is not his first language, so he's struggling, right? Using the word costume rather than suit, like, you can tell that he speaks 3 languages, by the way, right? And so let's give him a break. He speaks Russian, he speaks Ukrainian, he speaks English. I don't know if he speaks another one. So, like, okay, fine. The reason he wears the t-shirt is to create the impression that he just came from the front lines. That's the whole reason. Now, the first time he wore it, Yeah, it was impactful. Yeah, like I remember when the invasion first happened, everyone expected that the war would be gone in a couple of days, right? With Russia claiming total victory. Because, like, what can a country like Ukraine do against one of the strongest militaries on planet Earth? I expected Zelensky to run, which is usually what happens, right? Pick his bags of money, run, live in exile. Kind of what Bashar al-Assad did, right? Like, Bashar al-Assad has run. So that's what I expected. But no, like, Ukraine actually fought. And they're fighting the Russians to today. Like, I'm not going to say that this is not a monumental achievement. Like, imagine if America tried to invade Mexico, and 3 years later, Mexico is still fighting. Even if, like, Europe would pump, or China would pump weapons into Mexico, it would be humiliating for America. It would be like man baffling. Like, how are the Mexicans doing it, right? Like, this is what we're talking about, the same shit. At a smaller scale, because Russia doesn't have the technology of the US, and Ukraine is probably, I don't know, I think they may be a little bit better than Mexico. Although, like, not necessarily, because Mexico has the cartels, right? So, like, they at least know how to shoot a weapon. But still, the idea is, like, the same, right? Like, it is monumental. And the first time they managed to push the Russians out of Kiev, everyone was baffled. It's like, holy shit, how are they doing it, right? And then you finally see Zelensky in Europe, and he's wearing the shirt. It's like almost he came out from the battle lines, right? Like, that was the message he was projecting. Like, this is, normally he wouldn't have left the country, but this is such an emergency event that he wants to get international help. He wants to convince people, so, didn't even have time to change. Okay, like, that was really good optics. I'm not going to lie. Like, part of warfare is propaganda, right? So the Russians also did their own propaganda. You had Putin surrounding himself with stewardesses at a table, if you guys remember, in order to show that, no, everything is fine. It's not a war. It's a special military operation. It will be done in a couple of weeks. Like, we're not going to declare war against Ukraine. I mean, come on. This is Ukraine, tiny nation. Well, like, it's Russia. Like, it would be demeaning to call it war. It's a special military operation going into some backwater country, going to change the regime there, and then we're going to come back, right? Like, that was the propaganda from the Russians. And so, like, they were too interested in optics. The optics that the Ukrainians had, it's like, look, he's busy conducting the military operations, and now he's appearing in a shirt, he's going to have a speech, and then go back to Ukraine. But it's been a couple of years now. Like, we know that Kiev is not under siege. Put a fucking suit. Because otherwise, it looks cringe. Like, the internet is basically saying this, not me. Like, people on the internet are saying, like, no, it's not like the first time, right? Just put a fucking suit. You're going into the Oval Office. Come on. And again, like, it would have projected a much more powerful image if he actually wore a suit, because it would symbolize exactly that. It would symbolize that, okay, with this agreement, I can feel that the war is coming to an end. Like, we're finally, like, the Biden administration cocked us. Like, they were promising shit. A lot of it didn't get delivered. And so now we're finally getting things done with the Trump administration. And I'm wearing a suit to show that the war is coming to an end. That would have been powerful. And it would have impressed Donald Trump, probably, because, like, he always expects Zelensky to wear the shirt, but now he's wearing a suit, right? But if you're, like, if I was Zelensky, right, and I was asked, like, why don't I wear a suit? I would have framed it differently. Like, there's still something with what he went, but I would have framed it a little bit differently. I would have said, the war, like, as any war in human history, it's got the military component, which is the kinetic one, the battlefield, and then it's got the moral component, to moralize the troops. I, as the president, is my job to also surveil the battlefield, and also to inspire the troops, to show morality to the troops, right? How would the troops feel if they see me in the White House, enjoying myself, having fun, wearing a suit, having extravagant dinners while they're fighting in the trenches? And as such, I'm not wearing a suit. I'm going to constantly wear this t-shirt as a reminder of the suffering of my people. I mean, like, that would probably flew a lot differently if you genuinely want to go with that, right? If you want to go with plan B, that's how I would have framed it. He tries to play relatable, ends up looking stubborn. No wonder. Well, that's the thing. It's not relatable. It's not relatable at all. You're in the Oval Office, okay? Any person on planet Earth, besides Zelensky, would wear a suit in the Oval Office, even if you don't have money. Like, look, I've been, when I was studying law school, I went to court. And when I was in court, there were a lot of cases involving different types of people. Some of the people there were incredibly poor. Every single fucking one of them was wearing a suit. Even the most poor person, like even when it was a beggar, he was wearing a suit. How? If he couldn't afford one, he would rent one. If he couldn't rent one, he would ask a friend. If he had no friends, he would go to the graveyard, dig someone's corpse, and steal that suit. But like, no matter what, like people would wear a suit in a courthouse. So no, like that's the point. It's not relatable, because any individual, anyone that would go to the White House would wear a suit. Like like this is not even up for debate. Even the president who fucking lives there wears a suit. It's like taking a bow to the queen, right? Doing a curtsy if you're a woman in front of the queen. Like you're supposed to do these things. It's not like these are non-negotiable, right? Like if you are to meet the Japanese, no, seriously, imagine this, right? Like the Japanese emperor invites you to the palace for whatever reason, right? Like maybe you save. Okay, you're in Japan, you save a girl's life, and you find out that she's related to the emperor, and now the emperor is so happy of what you did that they're going to invite you to give you a medal. Do you wear a suit or not? Are you going to bow or not? And like this is not even you trying to get on the emperor's good side, by the way. This is not even like you. He tries to play relatable. No, yeah, we already talked about that. Yeah, are you going to fist bump the emperor? In a court, you even get a suit for free. Not in my country. Do they do that in the United States? That's so fucking cool. If they actually give you a suit for free. No, in Romania they don't. No, but like, and you're not required to have a suit. Like, I'm pretty sure if the judges, like the judges are going to look at who you are. And if you're like a beggar, a person that's impoverished, they're not going to be unreasonable, right? But like, I don't think Zelensky is that. I don't think like he is impoverished. And secondly, I don't I haven't seen any poor person, no matter how poor, not to wear a suit in court. Oh yeah, an orange jumpsuit. To be fair, if he actually wear an orange jumpsuit, that would have been even more disrespectful. Yeah, he could have Saul Goodman it. He could have Saul Goodman it. Because of Europeans freaking out about Trump, a lot of Norwegian media is making propaganda that Norway should join the European Union, while the majority of Norwegian population are against the EU. I think I know what's happening. You know how U.S. aid was putting a lot of money into leftist outlets to make leftist propaganda? Well, with U.S. aid drying up, the Germans picked up the slack. So in the European Union, there are like two major ways that the press is financed. Well, actually three. Like number one is your home nation, right? So like the Norwegian government is probably financing some of the press. It's not necessarily, but in some cases it happens. And by the way, financing doesn't mean it gives them money straight up. Tax cuts, cracks down on their competition with hate speech laws. I don't know the situation in Norway, but like basically this is what some nations do it. The other one is from USAID, right? So like NGOs that were funded by USAID, like they're going to promote the press in your country, and it's going to start spilling out woke shit. And then it's Germany, right? So in Romania, G4 Media, I think, is actually backed by the Germans. And then there's like smaller players like China, France, that they're also sponsoring. China is with environmentalism. Usually, if you see in the newspaper, study claims, study shows, that's China. But anyway, the whole thing is that right now Germany and the United Kingdom, they're using this as an opportunity to try and create their own army, right? So like they're using this whole conflict in order to try to create the European army. And this is why the press is now becoming anti-American, and it's like, oh, we need to build our... A lot of Americans are happy. They're like, good, Europe should defend itself. Yeah, you say that until you see like a European-Russian alliance. Or a European-Chinese alliance. Or a European-Indian alliance. I don't know what's going to happen 50 years down the line, because that's the thing. You know, people think in the now. But what will happen like 50, 100 years down? I don't fucking know. What I do know is that it's not good for Europe to have an army. What is good is for European member states to have strong military. That is true. I want Poland to be strong. I want Romania to have a strong army. Like that, that's true. But I don't want like the Germans to have a strong army. There's a historical reason for that. Two historical reasons, actually. Because of Europeans freaking out about Trump. Okay, Zelensky is used to walk on the red carpet no more. Well, I already made a video talking about like the two different mindsets, right, that we had up until now. Europe is fallen. No, I don't think like Europe is fallen. I think it needs to get its bureaucracy to fall. What really amused me, though, is that finally Ursula von der Leyen has realized that Europe is not competitive. We're stagnating. Like, China is competitive when it comes to fields like AI, military technology, chip manufacturing. Like, China is becoming competitive. The United States is competitive. Big pharma, military, a lot of other stuff, right? Like, they're competitive. Europe is not. And so they're like, okay, why is it Europe competitive? Oh, it's because we have bureaucracy. Like, I can just give you on the top of my head, GDPR compliance. That just destroys our social media. Like, this is why we don't have the European version of Facebook or Twitter or anything like that. GDPR. The second one, the Digital Service Act. Another colossal failure. Green New Deal-like agenda, right? Like the Green Deal and that type of shit. Completely destroying our agriculture, our manufacturing, everything. What else do we have? The AI bill, right? We don't have an AI, but we have the first legislation on Earth dealing with AI, guaranteeing we're never going to have our own AI product. And so, like, all of these put together is making Europe not competitive. And then you also have, like, tiny regulations that are just there to piss people off. Why is it that if you buy a Pepsi bottle, the bottle cap needs to be attached to the... Like, all these retarded things. And so it's the culture of safetyism on top of that, environmentalism. And so Ursula von der Leyen is like, okay, well, what we need is to have more bureaucracy to cut down on the previous bureaucracy. Okay. I mean, we're going to enter the century of humiliation. But luckily, you know, as China got out of the century of humiliation, after a couple of generations, eventually, you know, Europe will be great again. No left-wing nations should have an army. Well, it's not something you can stop, though. I just don't understand why Europe thinks Russia is the devil, but somehow getting with China is okay. Well, that's pretty simple. First of all, China is further away. Right? So, like, that's one thing. It's like the enemy that's closer is a lot more dangerous. Secondly is the history of Russia. Like, Russia consistently backs on its deals and the things that it signs. And the interests of Russia. The interests of Russia for now seems to actually be into recreating the territories of the Russian Empire. Not the Soviet Union, the Russian Empire. Right? So, like, they want Belarus, Ukraine, they want all those regions back into Mother Russia. According to duginism. According to Dugin. And it seems that this is what they're after. What does China want? Well, China wants to sell you shit, right? Like it wants to destroy your manufacturing capabilities with environmentalist policies. It wants you to embrace the Green New Deal so that you buy solar panels from them. And it just wants to sell you shit. They're not interested in territorial conquest. They're not interested in Europe. I mean, they're not interested in territorial conquest in Europe. They probably wouldn't be able to hold it because the culture is so different, like people would reject it. No, they want stability, right? So they don't want political drama and shit in order to jeopardize their merchandise. They just want to sell you shit while at the same time prevent you from producing stuff so you can compete with them. But the thing, like, this is manageable, right? Like, you can just say no to the Green New Deal. Like, they're not forcing it down your throat. The population can reject it. The Chinese products aren't necessarily bad or evil, right? It's like, you can deal with that. But, like, if you have a country that just sends tanks over the border, well, that's a little bit more problematic, don't you think? Like, between the two evils. One of them is a little bit more scary. And that's why the Europeans don't trust the Russians. Because it's not about, like, the Ukraine. No, it's historic. Like, throughout the history of Russia, they have acted belligerent. They're unapologetic. They go back on their treaties. Well, the Lola, like, tell me the treaties that you think Russia respected. You know, like I'll make it easy for you. Like, tell me a treaty that it signed, and when it came to push, they actually followed it through. And I'll do it for Turkey, right? Like, let's take a different nation. Let's take the Ottoman Empire. And I'll go like, okay, they had this treaty, and when it was time to enforce it, they did. They enforced 100% of it. And this is another thing with China. Like, Xi Jinping, again, like, this is historical. Like, I'm looking at what they do, not what they say or anything else. If you sign a deal with Xi Jinping, at least he tries to respect the spirit of the deal. Like, he generally tries. Like, I've seen it with other nations. When he signs something on paper, he tries to respect it. Obviously, not all the time, but, like, he probably has, like, an 80% success rate with that shit. Which is why they don't usually sign the deals, right? And if they do, it's in their interest. But again, if you sign a deal with China, they try to respect it. If you sign a deal with Russia, you know for sure they're not going to respect it. So like, Europeans are, like, signing deals with other people because, like, there is the chance that the other crazy person may actually not fuck you over. But you know for sure that Russia will fuck you over. Like, it's 100% guaranteed. It's almost always, all the time. And by the way, Russia is not the only country that backs on its deals. The United States as well. But, like, again, the United States, again, has a track record of, like, at least once in a blue moon, occasionally, they do follow the deals. Usually the way the United States works is like a company. If it's in their interest, they will follow the deal. Almost all the time, right? Like, if you make it, like, it's like Donald Trump. It's like, yeah, I know we have a deal to protect you, but, like, what else do you got? Well, we got minerals. Okay, now we're talking, right? It's the same thing. It's like, make it worth their while. Make it in their interest, and they will actually follow the deal. The only thing capable of saving Europe from the EU evil hand trying to harm the local ethnicities is to reform the continent culture for self-preservation with Wu. You know what it means? I think it's not like... If you try to look at this through the prism of race, it doesn't really work in Europe. We really care about ethnicity more. The Poles have beef with the Hungarians. The Poles have beef with the Germans and the Russians. The Romanians had beef with the Hungarians and the Russians. Romania is incredibly anti-Russian as a people. There is nothing you can do to persuade us otherwise. You know, like Dugin tries to say, well, yeah, but there's like the Orthodox connection. No. Our patriarchy is based, your patriarchy is shit. Like, you can't really, no. It just doesn't work. And usually it's because of historical grievances. Right? It's like growing up, your grandma tells you horror stories about how the Red Army came and raped everyone in her village. Like, there's no... Right? And so, that's the mindset of Europe. The problem that you're having now with the European Union is the bureaucracy. Eventually, the bureaucracy becomes so suffocating that people will generally have to ask, but like, why the fuck are we putting up with this shit? How are we profiting, right? And you're going to have nations like Poland just ignoring the bureaucracy. Just being like, fuck you, we do what we want. And then the European Union will be like, okay, do we kick Poland or do we allow them to stay? Well, if we allow them to stay, they're a bad example because they constantly don't do what we say. But if we kick them off, we lose Poland. And I think that's how the European Union is going to die. It's basically like the nation states are just going to stop listening to the bureaucracy and make their own legislations. I know we got a deal, but what else you got? Well, it's literally how the US policy works. It's just like, look at everything else. The US interest would make sense to separate Russia from China. I don't see what Europe gains from joining China so long as China is aligned with Russia. It's no different. What do you mean what we gain? We gain cheap manufacturing. Also, like, China can be used against Russia. During the Ceausescu in Romania, we had the invasion of Czechoslovakia by the Soviet Union. And Romania allied itself with China, and they said, like, if Romania didn't send troops to Czechoslovakia, and China said, if the Russians invade, you have the backing of the Chinese people. Like, our Romanian brethren can rely on the glorious Republic of China for defense. And they would have actually done it. I genuinely believe it. Like, the historical context would have genuinely allowed China to have a cost belly if the Russians send their tanks. Yeah, the thing with China and Taiwan is really difficult. Like, see, the difference between Ukraine and Taiwan is that, again, Russia and the United States signed to guarantee the sovereignty and independence of Ukraine. The thing that happened with Taiwan, I don't know how many of you know history. Please correct me if I'm wrong. This is my understanding. When China had its communist uprising, they they managed to get the sitting government, the official Chinese government, they managed to get it into exile. So they had like a civil war between the communist faction and the non-communist faction. And the non-communist faction sought refuge into the island of Taiwan. And because of the geographical area, because of the way it's difficult to navigate over there, I think like you can only make an amphibious invasion only twice a year because of the tides and something. The Chinese couldn't get Taiwan, right? So like they completed their communist revolution. They managed to conquer the entire China. They didn't have Taiwan and they didn't have Hong Kong. Hong Kong is because they gave it to the English during the Opium Wars. And it was like theirs for a couple of years, for I think like 100 years or so. And then Taiwan, they were trying to lay siege to it. They were trying to invade it. And this is where America came in. And they fought off the Chinese and they said, if you don't cool it, we're going to nuke you. Right? So like they threatened Mao with nukes. And after that, the Chinese decided to back away from Taiwan. And so like Taiwan now is like the inheritors of the official Chinese government, right? So like this, Taiwan is pretty much probably how China would have looked like without communism, right? And they're allied with America because of two reasons. Number one, it's one of the most influential areas in the world due to its shipping lanes and trade ports and strategic importance. From within that area, you can threaten other Asian nations, including Japan. And it's one of the only places where 90% of the chip manufacturing is built, right? So like 90% of chips in the world are being manufactured by Taiwan. And so like the China policy is that they don't recognize Taiwan as a nation. They're basically saying, no, this is part of China. Like we had the communist revolution and our government like fled there, but it's still part of our nation, right? Imagine if, let's say, this is a good analogy, right? Imagine if like there's a communist revolution in the United States and the American government fled to the Manhattan Island. But like, let's say Manhattan Island is the size of Germany, right? And you have like the entire US government fleeing to Manhattan Island. And when the communists try to take it, you have like the Chinese-Russia alliance defending Manhattan Island. Right? Like that's pretty much the situation. Like from the point of view of the Americans, like, no, it's still our fucking island. But from the point of view of an international community, it's like de facto, no, it's not yours. Like they're independent now. Where does China get its chips then? I think they're manufacturing some themselves, and I think Taiwan is still trading with them. This is like what some people don't understand. Just because you're at war or in a state of hostility doesn't mean you don't trade. Like the South and the North during the American Civil War still did some trading with each other. But yeah, they probably get it through third parties like Singapore, and they're probably building it themselves. Like I'm pretty sure like China is getting its chip manufacturing up and running. China thinks that half of Eurasia is China. Well, yeah, I mean, they probably have other cost bellies there. But, like, the one with Taiwan is something that I can understand, right? This is why America doesn't mention if it's going to defend Taiwan or not. Because you can actually make the argument that, well, though the argument is wrong, right? Like, historically speaking, you'd say that Taiwan belongs to them. But, like, the reality is, actually, China belongs to Taiwan, if you think about it, right? Because, like, their official government was there. But then the next question is, like, what is an official government? Like, if you have a genuine revolution and you upend the previous government, right? I mean, isn't that what the French have done with their monarchy? Right? Does that mean, like, the current French government is illegitimate because they overthrew the monarchy? It's like a philosophical thing anyway. But still, like, that's how they view it, right? And so this is why it's different than Ukraine. Taiwan is also part of the first island chains forged with Japan. Yeah, I know. Like there were Japanese people in Taiwan when the Chinese government in exile came, which weren't very happy and pleased about the situation. Point is, China has more expansionist aspiration, arguably more than Russia. Yeah, but they're not neighboring Europe. There is no fucking way that China is going to conquer European nations. The culture is so different. Like, it's one thing if you're to conquer, a nation that's closer in culture to you, than if you're conquering something that's like so alien in culture that, let me give you an example of what I mean, right? So, I was actually I think I said this on a previous stream, but I was talking with a person about where he where would I recommend for him to live, right? Like he wanted to leave the country, and it's like, what is a nice place to start a life? And I was telling him, it's like, dude, go to a place that has Christian values. And he's like, well, V, you're an atheist. Like, what do you mean? And it's like, no, I'm not talking about like the religion. Like, no. At least you understand the customs, right? Like, at least you understand what to do versus what not to do. If you go into a place like Asia and you're in a village and you kick a rock and because you kick the rock, you upset the village spirit. And now the entire villagers have to go onto this long fasting ritual and they have to say prayers 24/7 in order to appease the spirit. They're going to fuck you up. They're going to beat the living shit out of you. And you think it's trivial, but they have a reason to. You disturb their village. You anger the spirits. Right? So, like, the cultures are so different when it comes to superstitions, traditions, where you're supposed to behave, that it's a lot easier to integrate as a Christian in another place that at least has a Christian past, if that makes sense. Yeah, like scribbling in Feng Shui, yeah. I'm not even against China completely. I just think the EU's position against Russia is the complete opposite position to China. Well, again, the EU's position with China, with Russia was pretty good. I mean, Germany was having the Nord Stream pipeline too. Everything was great. People were collabing. We were doing the collab. And then Russia takes Crimea. And it's like, okay, they took Crimea. And people are like starting to sour the relations a little bit, but it's still, the collab is going. And then Russia decides to invade Ukraine, at which point Europe was like, well, what guarantees do we have that they're not going to invade further? It's like, what if it just so happens that there are Russians in Germany that are being oppressed, or in Poland, or in other places? And so this is why it's not collabing anymore. Like, it's I don't like the victim blame, but, like, come on. Look at how they dress. They dress like little green men. They eat cute guinea pigs in Peru. Yeah, that's another thing. Like there are cultural differences, like the moral busybody, right? Oh my God, if you bring a Karen to Romania, I would be worried for her safety. Like, Eastern Europeans literally do not tolerate Karenism. It's a slur. Like, the concept of a moral busybody is a slur here. Mind your own fucking business is the golden rule. Like, if you're not the person's family friend, if you're not associated with them, if you're not their relative, if you don't have a position of power over them, and you start moralizing about what they do in their private time, like, people throw fists. Like, seriously, like, people are incredibly aggressive over this. It probably triggers them because of communism, right? Because in communism, like, everyone had to think the same. And after the fall of communism, Karens were so despised. But to be fair, it's also, like, not a society that promotes Karenism. Karenism is promoted in Protestant cultures, right? So, like, Protestants are the type of religious sect which, like the evangelicals I'm talking about, which deny tradition, and they also deny ritual, right? So as such, it becomes like the sola scriptura, the interprets of the Bible by the pastor. And so, like, the pastor will always interpret the Bible in his favor. Like, if he is a drunk, he's going to say that drinking is a sin, but, like, oh, well, Jesus, in some cases, you know, he's not as upset about drinking as he's upset about this other thing. And they're also going to interpret it based on real events, right? Like, he reads the Bible and he thinks that Jesus is big mad on video games or some shit, because that's the current day issue. This is how you actually get woke ideology that's like woke Christianity. It's the sola scriptura thing. In Eastern Europe, we have tradition, right? So tradition doesn't just revolve around, okay, well, this is the day, this is what we do. But it's also like, if something existed for 40 years, we don't fuck with it. This is why we don't have prohibition in Europe. It's like, well, alcohol existed before I was born. Alcohol existed before my parents were born. Banning alcohol may not be a good idea. You know, like, obviously, it's a vice. Obviously, people shouldn't gorge with alcohol. But at the same time, like, a virtuous person is not a person that doesn't have alcohol to drink. No, it's a person that does have alcohol to drink and chooses not to commit the sin. That's a virtuous person. And so, like, our morality is different because it's based on tradition. Like, if something existed in the past and it didn't kill anyone, or like, society didn't collapse, then surely it can exist a little bit more. And there is wisdom in this. The wisdom is that when you start tinkering with society, you realize that it doesn't, like, you don't actually have the possibility of fixing issues. You have the possibility of making compromises. So you may fix an issue, but you damage something else. You get trade-offs, basically. And so when it comes to tradition, it's important. It's like, okay, well, this is how things used to be. There's no reason to change it. I've seen like to treat the Bible as a law book and argue weird technicalities. Yeah, pretty much. Like, you have Protestants that literally memorize Bible verses and then they quote them at you. Joe Kennedy made his fortune from the prohibition. Well, I'm sure he did. No, I don't think it's like every action has an equal and opposite reaction. But it's basically like when you push an ideology like third wave feminism, you get with transgender women in women's transgender men in women's bathroom. You know, kind of like that. Like, for instance, if you're going to promote Me Too culture, you're going to end up with CEOs not trusting women. They you know, like, look at the American moral panic. Every single moral panic ends up doing more harm to the thing that they're supposed to protect. So what was the satanic panic? Well, the satanic panic was supposed to protect Christianity from entertainment, right? Like, from like, entertainment was temptation, it was satanic. So, like, we're promoting this moral panic, we're promoting the satanic panic in order to keep Christianity strong. what did it accomplish? It accomplished the complete abolition of Christian dominance in the zeitgeist for 3 decades now. Like, people ended up voting for Obama, people ended up embracing atheism, people, right? Like, the opposite of the moral panic was accomplished. What did the Me Too movement accomplish? Well, it created fourth wave feminism that promotes transgender ideology, and it made women untrustworthy because the simple act, like, what was the Me Too movement? It was the simple accusation enough to destroy a person's career. And so if there's no way to defend, like, if a simple accusation can ruin someone, then just Mike Pencing it and choosing never to be alone with the woman in the office was what men did. And so there were articles in The Guardian and Jezebel and other publications basically stating that CEOs now don't want to take women out of the apprentice, right? What did the Black Lives Matter moral panic do? Did it make race relationships better or worse? What did the moral panic about trans issues accomplish? Well, it managed to get pronouns banned from the government. It managed to get the T dropped from the LGBT on the government White House. Pushed trans women out of women's sports. Like every single moral panic does literally the opposite of what it tries to accomplish. And the thing with the moral panic, like, it's not like being against something is bad, right? Like, no one is saying that being against rape is not something that everyone should be. But the moral panic takes that to like an 18, right? So like the Me Too movement, what does it do? Well, it claims to be against rape, but it waters down the definition of rape. That now you can rape someone with your eyes. You know, he's raping me with his eyes. Oh, Game of Thrones has rape in it. So it promotes rape. Like, they're watering down the definitions. They're going after the trivial shit. And the only reason they're doing it is for the moral crusaders to feel good. And it's not effective, right? It doesn't do anything. And in fact, it does the opposite of what it's supposed to do. That's a moral panic, right? So I want people to understand there is a difference between having every person in society being against rape, which is normal and healthy, versus a moral panic on rape, which is watering down the definitions, accusing people without evidence, and if you try to defend the person, then it's guilt by collective and all of that shit. There are many problems that end up on display. The disrespect and undermining towards the United States that comes in general, but particularly from Europe, which is the next big ally competitor in Ukraine. The problem with Europe is that Europe is actually very friendly to the United States. More friendly than some people would think it's acceptable. But the issue is that the United States had the culture of the Democrats for the last decade or so. Like, you guys, in order to stomp down on Occupy Wall Street, you brought wokeness. And wokeness is an ideology that says you're evil. Like, you guys embraced an ideology which claims that America is evil. So you went from producing soft power and excellence through Disney magic, Hollywood, TV shows, rock music, all of that. Like, America was the place that everyone wanted to be in. You went from that to producing an ideology of gay, an ideology that said America is evil, it's harmful, it's bad, right? And so Europe took that from you. Now, I know the ideology comes from Europe. I'm aware of where the idea, but I'm telling you what happened, right? Like, the last things that happened. Last things that happened is that America injected itself with wokeness and then exported it into Europe. And so Europe is now viewing America through the prism of woke ideology. And basically, like, Europe is 100% aligned with the Democrats. Like, every Democrat policy that you guys have is going to be found within the European Union. Yeah, it's Arnold Schwarzenegger, screw your freedoms. Literally. Like, that's the culture that America was producing. I know you guys aren't responsible for it. Like, I know my viewers don't agree with it. But at the cultural level, even you can't deny that if you zoom out, you know, you have Arnold Schwarzenegger, my childhood hero, saying, screw your freedoms. Like it has embraced woke culture. And Europe has taken that and embraced it as well. And they view you through your self-hatred. Anyway, I see that the folks in my house are awakening, and so I'm going to leave it here. Don't know if I'll make a This Week in Stupid tonight. Maybe I will. But in the meantime, I'll upload the videos on my main channel, and hopefully I'll see you guys there.